Hello everybody, welcome to another Warframe video where today I'm going to show you how to farm all the resources in the plains of Eidolon. So the first thing we need to talk about are Thumpers. These are mini bosses that can randomly spawn in the plains and they drop an absolute ton of plains resources when you defeat them. There are multiple tiers of Thumpers, with the higher tiers dropping better stuff of course, and they're honestly not that difficult, so whenever you see a Thumper you should absolutely try and take it down. You can get most plains resources by just farming Thumpers and it's fairly effective, especially if you're good at spotting them while flying around in Archwing. Plus, they also drop some weapon blueprints and mods. So I'm just gonna repeat it one more time. Whenever you see a Thumper in the plains, take it down, because the amount of stuff you get in just a couple of minutes is kind of ridiculous. Next up, I want to mention the generic plains resources, those being Grokdrul, Iradite, Maprico, Nistlepod, Condroc wings, and Kuaka's spinal claws. Grokdrul, Iradite, Maprico, and Nistlepod are extremely common. They're scattered all around the plains, and you'll basically never have to farm them because you'll get more than enough if you just sneeze in the right direction. Condroc wings and Kuaka's spinal claws, on the other hand, come from the two animals, Condroc and Kuaka, surprisingly enough, that you can hunt all throughout the plains. But you generally don't need to farm for these either, because you will AoE down plenty of animals as you're farming other things or you're just doing bounties. But just in case you somehow don't have enough of these and you need a few more, this is what the Kuakas look like. This is one of the species, there's actually multiple species of them, and this is what the Condrocs look like. They kind of look like vultures and they fly all over the plains. Alright, so now let's move on to the resources that you're actually gonna have to farm if you want to get all the shinies from Plains of Eidolon. So first up we have Breath of the Eidolon. This is a relatively new resource that's only available from the highest tier of bounty as well as the Steel Path bounty, where you can get 5 of them as a common reward. So if you want to farm these, you gotta do some bounties. Next up, we have Cetus Whisps. Now, there are 3 ways to get Cetus Whisps. Number 1, you can get them as a reward from bounties. Number 2, if you're at the final rank of Architect with the quills, you can buy them for 2,000 standing a pop from Quill Onco. And number 3, you can just find them out in the open world. Now, Cetus Whisps spawn exclusively around water. Now, the best way to farm them in the open world is by using your Archwing. Once you exit Cetus, you want to get in your Archwing and do 3 things essentially. You want to fly around the big lake in front of Cetus, you want to fly up and down the river that comes down from the hills, and you want to scout all the ponds that are scattered all throughout the plains. The Wisps are relatively easy to miss because they're fairly small, but they also move around all the time, so what you're looking for is movement. Also, one very important thing about farming Cetus Wisps in the open world is to pick them up very quickly, because once you get close to them, they will only stick around for a few seconds before flying away. Now, even though you only get 3 to 4 Wisps to spawn during the day and 6 to 8 Wisps to spawn during the night, I would still recommend you farm them during the day, because the nighttime makes them even harder to spot. This also means, by the way, that once you pick up 3 or 4 Wisps, you want to go back to Cetus and reset the plane so more Wisps can spawn. And finally, one big benefit of farming the Wisps this way is that you're flying all over the plane, so you will most likely stumble upon a Thumper at some point. Next up, we have Narmer Isoplast. This is a resource that you unlock by finishing the new war, and you can only get this from the Narmer bounty, which is also unlocked after you finish the new war. Next up, let's talk about Eidolon shards. So once the sun has gone bye-bye and the night has begun, you will gain access to the Eidolon hunt for the Tendrils, which will have you hunt down the Tendrils, as well as the Eidolon Cull bounty, which will have you face against the Tendrils, then the Guntalist, and finally the Hydrolist. I would recommend you do this in a party, especially if you're new, or you want to get it done quick. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this as a bounty, because the Tendrils will just spawn in the plains once the night has begun. The general idea of an Eidolon hunt is you get 2 or 3 Eidolon lures from the Grenier, depending on which Eidolon you're hunting down, which will allow you to capture the Eidolon rather than kill it, which gives you better loot. It also prevents the Eidolon from teleporting away between each phase if you charge them up fast enough. The way you charge these, by the way, is either by killing 3 Vonvalists near them, luring 3 ghostly Vonvalists to them, or by bringing 3 of the ghostly cores to them. You'll know when your lure is charged when its heads-up icon changes from yellow to blue. Once your lures are ready, it's time to fight the Eidolon. Now, the way you fight an Eidolon is in sort of 2 stages. The first stage is removing its shields, which is done with your Operator, and the second stage is destroying its Synovias, which is done with your Warframe. This is going to be very slow in the beginning, but it gets significantly faster as you get more gear and you unlock more of your focus schools. Now, I'm not gonna explain all the mechanics here because that is a video in and of itself, so I will simply link my Eidolon guide in the video description. Once you destroy one of the Eidolon Synovias, you wanna hide in the void with your operator to not get killed by the energy waves. And here, by the way, is an example of what happens if you don't charge your lures before you fight the Eidolon. The Eidolon just teleports away every time you destroy one of its Synovias, and you have to find it again, which wastes a lot of time. So I would highly recommend you charge at least one lure before you go to fight the Eidolon so that it doesn't do that. Once you destroy all 4 of the Eidolon Synovias, the Eidolon will lie down and start calling in Vonvalis to help it, which you need to destroy, otherwise they will heal it. Which leads into the final phase where you basically just shoot it until it's dead. Now, if you want to capture the Eidolon and get better rewards, you need to make sure that you're relatively close to it so that your lures are hooked onto the destroyed Synovias. This is what makes you capture the Eidolon rather than kill it once you deplete its health bar. I absolutely love the Eidolon boss fights. I think they're very fun and pretty rewarding, and even though, as I've said already, they're pretty slow in the beginning, they speed up considerably once you get the right gear. But anyway, this is how you get all different kinds of Eidolon charts. You can get Articulas, you can get Sentient cores, Spicy mods, and even an Arcane. You can get a lot of stuff from hunting Eidolons, especially if you do all 3 of the Eidolons with the Calling bounty. Next on the menu we have mining resources, which are very straightforward. All you basically need is a drill which you buy from the mining NPC. There are 2 types of mining resources, ores and gems. Ores are red, gems are blue. So if you're looking for Auron, Coprun, Ferros or Pyrol, you want to mine red deposits because they're ores. And if you're looking for Azurite, Crimzian, Devar, Nyth, Sentirum and Veridos, you want to go for blue because they're gems. Mining, as I've said already, is extremely straightforward. It's not difficult, it just takes time. Most big rocks will have deposits on them, some small rocks will have deposits on them. Though if you want to go ham and mine a bunch of stuff, I would recommend you go into one of the big caves, which are absolutely chock full of deposits. And by the way, you can't really affect what kind of resources you get from the nodes, aside from just being good at the minigame, which gives you more or better stuff. So you just mine red for ore or blue for gems, and eventually you will get what you need. And finally, we're going to talk about the most complicated farming that you can do in the Plains of Eidolon, which is fishing. The first thing you want to do before you go fishing is buy luminous dye from the fishing vendor, which will make the fish much easier to see underwater. Alternatively, you can run the Oxyl Sentinel, which will highlight the fish as well. Also, pick up all the baits as soon as they're available, because, well, you're gonna need them. Okay, so what I need you to remember right now is there are 3 different types, let's just say, of water in the plains. There's the big lake in front of Cetus, there's the ocean surrounding the plains, and finally the little ponds that are scattered all throughout the plains. This is important because certain fish only show up in certain types of water. So there are 3 different fish that you can get in the big lake in front of Cetus. There's the moorfish, which can be gutted for moorfish bones. This one shows up during the day, it doesn't require bait, and you want to use the Lanzo, Tulok or Peram spears. There's also the Charc eel, which can be gutted for Charc Electroplax. This one shows up during the day and night, doesn't require bait, and you want to use the Lanzo, Tulok or Peram spears. And finally there is the Norg, which can be gutted for Norg brain. This one only shows up during the night, it requires Norg bait, and you want to use the Peram or Shockprot spears. Next up we have the small ponds that are scattered all throughout the plains. Here you can get the Yogwen, which can be gutted for Yogwen's stomach. This one only shows up during the day, it does not require bait, and you want to use the Lanzo, Tulok or Peram spears. You can also get the Khut-Khut here, which can be gutted for the Khut-Khut venom sac. This one also shows up during the day, doesn't require bait, and you want to use the Lanzo, Tulok or Peram spears. Next up we have the Mortis lungfish, which can be gutted for Mortis horn. This one shows up during the day and night, though it's much more common during the night. It doesn't require bait, and you want to use the Lanzo or Peram spears. And finally you can get Cathol, which can be gutted for Cathol tendrils. This one only shows up during the night, and only if you throw Cathol bait into a hotspot. Hotspots are kind of like splashes that you will sometimes see in random ponds throughout the plains. And for this one you want to use the Lanzo or Abyssal spears. And last but definitely not least, we have the ocean. And the ocean, unsurprisingly, has the most fish in it. So we have the Goopolla, which is the most common fish that can be gutted for Goopolla spleen. This one shows up during the day and night, it does not require bait, and you want to use the Lanzo, Tulok, Peram, Spari or Abyssus spears. There's also the Tralok, which can be gutted for Tralok eyes. This one only shows up during the day, it does not require bait, and you want to use the Tulok or Spari spears. Then there is the Sharak, which can be gutted for Sharak teeth. This one shows up during the day and night, it requires the Twilight bait, and you want to use the Lanzo or Tulok spears. You can also catch the Karkina here, which you can gut for the Karkina antenna. This one shows up during the day and night, it requires Twilight bait, and you want to use the Lanzo or Tulok spears. Then there is the Murkray, which you can gut for Murkray liver. This one shows up during the day and night, it requires the Murkray bait, and you want to use the Lanzo or Abyssus spears. And finally, we have the Glapid, which can be gutted for the Seram beetle shell. This one shows up during the night, it requires the Glapid bait, and you want to use the Peram spear. All fish also give you fish meat, fish scales and fish oil, and you got them via the fishing NPC. And that is pretty much it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you have any other tips on farming resources in the plains, please share them in the comment section down below. And if you would like to support the channel, you can check out the memberships down below, Plago, etc. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.